there's a public school board in North Carolina that I think is about to get sued because they really want to include Christian prayers in their meetings. Now, the reason I want to tell you the story is because one of their board members knows this is a horrible idea, and she did her best to make sure the rest of the board did not make a serious mistake. So this is taking place in the Cabarrus County School Board. And a couple of weeks ago, they were discussing adding a prayer to their meetings. One of their board members, Melanie Freeman, she made the argument that, hey, prayer is everywhere. God is everywhere. We have in God we trust as our motto. And you have that on the money, right? And you say we're one nation under God in the pledge. And therefore, we should say a prayer to God at the beginning of our meetings. Let me play for you what she said, then we'll talk about it afterwards.
From the very beginning, when the Puritans touched ground in the New World, prayer has been the bedrock of this nation. The First Continental Congress relied heavily on prayer to move forward in their deliberations and bring unity in writing our Constitution. Today, our U.S. Congress begins each opening day with an invocation before reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Many state governments as well as municipalities also begin their meetings with an invocation. We have a National Day of Prayer. We have In God We Trust on our money, and we pledge allegiance to one nation under God. The Supreme Court has ruled on 2 separate occasions that an invocation does not violate the Establishment Clause in our Constitution, and having an invocation is a time-honored tradition of our country. For these reasons and more, I respectfully make a motion to include an invocation to our agenda and meetings moving forward. I also ask this to be forwarded to the Policy Committee to write guidelines that may be voted on by this board.
Okay, so where do you even begin with that much ignorance, right? She doesn't seem to know that a lot of those traditional mentions of God in the pledge as the motto, all that, that's not like some tradition that existed at our nation's founding. That is stuff that was added because of targeted efforts by Christians in the 1950s. And this is also why you never allow Christians to put like the 10 Commandments in schools today, because even if it's symbolic, they use those symbols to justify doing this sort of stuff later on, and they'll just say it's tradition, right? But besides that, here's the bigger issue. She said Congress opens the day with an invocation, and the Supreme Court has ruled in defense of invocations. However, what she doesn't pick up on, and what maybe she just doesn't know it because she doesn't do the research clearly, is that city councils and state governments are substantively different from school boards, all right, where children may be present. That's kind of the big difference. This is from the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which, focuses on this for a long time. They have a whole section about school board prayers on their website. And I want to zone in on what they say here. Over 60 years of Supreme Court decisions have affirmed that religious ritual and indoctrination are inappropriate and illegal in public schools, including at graduations and other school-sponsored events. They have said you can have invocations at city council meetings and all that stuff. But at the very end here, a school board meeting is a school-sponsored event, and it is subject to Establishment Clause precedent involving public schools. To put it another way, you have kids that show up at school board meetings, so you cannot use a board meeting as a way to indoctrinate other people. Doesn't matter if a majority of the board says it's cool. City councils, even though I wish this weren't the case, city councils, you're expecting it to be adults. Institutions of, legislatures, Congress, these are adults. So I wish they didn't have this symbolic prayer at the beginning of meetings, but there's a difference. No kids involved, right? So what she is asking for isn't just ethically wrong. It's not just exclusionary. It's illegal. There is no legal precedent to have Christian invocations or any invocations at school board meetings. And here's the thing. There was one member of that board that knew all of that. Her name is Pam Escobar. And after that other woman, Melanie Freeman, ended that ignorant spiel, Escobar chimed in by trying to explain she said, I'm not, like, here's me trying to put myself in her shoes. She wasn't going to try to make a legal argument against it. She just tried to make a passionate argument for why this is a bad idea. And the argument she is making is this is a very diverse community, and trying to shove prayer into a school board meeting would exclude so many people in their community. Why would you want to do that? I'm going to play you this speech. It is a long speech that she is making, but I wouldn't be playing this for you if I didn't think this was worth it. Again, she's not just a voice of reason here. She is a voice of sensibility, and she is speaking for everyone in the crowd who doesn't have her platform. Okay? Let me play this for you. It's a long clip. It is worth your time to hear.
You saw this meeting tonight. It was beautiful, right? The first hour, this room was filled with parents and students and teachers and staff who are award-winning, exceptional people. And if you looked at our audience, they don't look like us. They look like this community. We are diverse. We come from 92 countries. We speak 67 languages. We represent the United States. We also represent Cabarrus County. And if you put prayer at the beginning of this meeting, I don't think that's a welcoming sign to the people who are in this room tonight. There are people in this room that don't practice the faith that the people on this board practice. And, we had an award-winning teacher tonight, right? She's only been teaching for 2 years. And in her kindergarten class, she welcomes everyone into her classroom, right? They talked about how the kids, every child belongs. Every child belongs. And I would not want to do anything that says to this community, you don't belong in our school district, you don't belong in our public school system. And so this, to me, is very disturbing. Because I think it sends the wrong message that we're trying to communicate. And frankly, we are not in the business of faith or religion. That's not what we do. We teach, we empower, we inspire. And so to do something that would be the opposite of that is disheartening. And then on top of it, this board prays. This board prays before every meeting if you choose to be a part of it. You have an invocation that is outside, and it's led by a lobbyist with Capital Ministries who is, I don't know, he's been here as long as I've been on the board. And how much prayer do you need? How much God do you need? We say under God, we say it. Why do we need to say more? And I will tell you just personally, as a board member, I do not feel welcome to be part of that prayer. And I'm Christian. And I don't feel welcome to go outside and pray with you. So if I'm one of 7 people who are sitting up here who's telling you this is exclusionary, how can we be a part of the school system and then do that to our entire school district? If you're going to bring this policy forward, I would seriously want us to take a look at, are we violating policy if more than 4 people are praying before our meeting? And it's happening every week. I think today was the first time it wasn't 5 of you. But it was still 4. Still 4. And policy says, if you're going to do that, then you need to be transparent about that. I don't know what Mr. Marshall is praying about. Is he telling you how to vote? Is he telling you what to believe? Capital Ministries, for those who are not aware, is a lobbyist, a conservative lobbyist. He used to send us all emails. I requested to be off the list because I was offended by some of the things that he was saying. So I don't know if that's the direction he's giving you before all of our meetings. Is he telling you not to trust me? I mean, I don't know. But the fact that the 5 of you are doing that, I hope that's enough prayer for you. Everyone who's sitting here still now are professionals. They come to work. to dedicate their lives to children. They didn't come here to pray with you. If you want to pray with them, take them to church. You want to be evangelical and do that, go for it. But not on my time, not on their time, and not in this community's time. We're not in this business. This is not the time or the place. We're better than that.
I don't know, man. That was amazing. I rarely see school board member speeches that are that good for that long and making compelling arguments throughout. One of the things she mentioned is that her colleagues, there are 7 people on this school board, and she said 4, maybe 5 of them take part in a prayer circle before meetings begin, and it's run by a group called Capital Ministries. If you are not familiar with Capital Ministries, and she mentioned it a little bit, they're most famous because this guy, their leader, Ralph Groinger, actually, he's the head of this thing. He does Bible studies for members of Congress where he says things like people who disagree with the conservative agenda are under the control of Satan. That's what this dude tells members of Congress. And what Miss Escobar was saying to this board is it's one of his guys that leads you in prayer before the meetings. What is he telling you to do? Is he telling you to vote certain ways? Is he telling you not to listen to me? I don't know. But like, that is what these people do in Congress. So that's disturbing. I love that she pointed out, like, how much prayer do you need? How much God do you need? At some point, you have to wonder, like, is there some threshold that these religious people feel like they need to hit before God is paying any attention to them? And she also mentioned she's a Christian herself, and yet even she doesn't feel welcome in their prayer circles because they're friggin' weird about it. So her colleagues did not get this. After that clip, one of them pointed out that, hey, other local governments have invocation prayers, which is true, but also, again, I repeat, these are different because children are not involved at city council meetings, at state government meetings, or anything like that. So now, after hearing her colleagues say idiotic things and clearly missing her point about respecting the diversity of their school district by not injecting their prayer into the mix, she tried again. And this time she told them, you guys, if we go through with this prayer, we are going to be sued. And one of the things she brings up, and I'll play this clip for you in a second, is that in another county in North Carolina, Rowan County, a few years ago, they had a whole thing where their county leaders were leading Christian prayers at every meeting. Not only did they have invocation prayers, but they were all Christian, and they were being said by the members of the county commission themselves. And they got sued over that, and they eventually lost that case. They had to settle the case. And guess what? In 2019, they settled that case, and the county had to pay $285,000 in attorney fees to the ACLU. They settled the case. They don't have to say they lost, but yeah, they lost. And so what Escobar wants to point out in the clip I'm about to show you is she says, if we go through with this, our situation is going to be even worse than Rowan County because they were adults. And so we will get sued, and it could be very costly, right? So if you have prayer at meetings, you have to be prepared for people who are going to sue over it. Let me play this clip for you. It's a little shorter, but it's worth it.
And guess what? If you do this, we're going to have legal challenges. So we're sitting here tonight talking about how much litigation we have and things that are in our control and out of our control, right? We can't control who sues us. But if you do this, it takes one person. And guess what? It goes all the way to the Supreme Court because it's in the Constitution. And Rowan County, the Rowan County commissioners dealt with this for 10 years ago. And it went all the way up. And I sent an article today to the chair, and I hope he shares it with all of you. The costs associated with doing something like this. So there are things you can control and things that you can't. You want to pray? You can control that you pray before this meeting. I don't need to participate in that, and I don't think you need to say that, make the entire school district join you in your prayer. And if you do, then you have to be prepared for people to sue us because They have the right to religious freedom. You want to talk about what's being an American, about being patriotic? That's American.
Love it. By the way, I want to share this comment with you. Heaven, I was going to turn the sound down during her speech. I'm glad you convinced me to listen. Gold. Yeah. No, listen, I haven't even shown you the best clips yet. But, and yes, this is Cabarrus County. Let me show this to you here. Is this Cabarrus County? They're a little different out there. My brother-in-law is considered a dirty commie out there. Kind of goes with it, which is pretty funny. So she made that speech. And what happened after she said all that? Like, we're going to get sued, you guys. Melanie Freeman, the lady who made this request, she chimed in saying, come on, I'm not trying to force Christianity on everybody. I'm just trying to force prayer on everybody. And she pointed out, like, the details of how they did that. Like, a policy committee could figure out the details. But again, that infuriated Escobar even more, because guess what? If you have any kind of policy, by the way, I'll just cut to the chase here. There's no policy that makes this work. Because again, invocations at school board meetings are illegal. But then she tried a different approach. Escobar's like, if you make the policy committee craft a policy about this, and our lawyers have to deal with the policy on this, it only creates more work and more chaos for all those people. Because think about what has to happen. Even if you theoretically had a policy for this, you have to figure out, how are we going to select the speakers? What are the rules for invocations? What happens if a speaker doesn't follow the rules? What happens if a Satanist wants to speak or an atheist wants to speak? What happens if only Christians ever want to speak? How are we going to make sure the district is truly open to people of all faiths and no religious faith, right? It is not as simple as just saying, we'll have an invocation policy and be done with it. It gets so complicated. And you all know this because I've talked plenty about invocations where you have an atheist speaking or you have a Satanist speaking, and it causes all sorts of madness because no one's expecting that still for some reason. So what happens when that becomes like, oh, the school board meeting got derailed after someone used the first 5 minutes to pray to Satan? That's what they're opening themselves up to. And this lady is trying to warn her colleagues. How is this good for anybody?
There's work associated with that too. So if you pass a policy that a different person can come through, who's going to vet that person? Who's going to make sure what they're saying is appropriate? How are we going to do this? Oh, and then guess what? If this person submits something and we prohibit them from saying what they submitted, then we get into whole free speech things. You are creating the amount of work associated with it, either with our staff or with our lawyers. This is not a simple, let's just say a prayer. It's very complicated, both in the preparation and then the execution. And again, we spent an hour celebrating our students and our faculty and our staff today. Why do I want to spend a second making things tricky or difficult for the lawyers who work for our school system or the staff? What is the benefit of that workload when you can pray, and you do right now? Let's be clear. What this thing is saying, what Cleveland County does is they pray, and it's outside. It's not during the meeting. So how is this good for kids? How is this good for our school district? How is this being a good steward of taxpayer dollars?
Okay.
It's not.
Okay.
She's trying so hard. Her colleagues are idiots, and she knows it. And she's like, come on, I'm trying to speak sense to you, and none of you seem to get it. And after all this, the board's attorney chimes in and says, well, there might be a way to craft a policy that minimizes legal problems, not makes them disappear, but like minimizes them. To which I, a non-lawyer, say, no, there isn't, because you're going to get sued if you have any kind of policy, because no invocations at school board meetings, so whatever. But after the attorney chimes in, she tried one last time to speak sense to her colleagues, and this time she just, you're going to listen to her tone, and you could tell she is exhausted, which you have to be after banging your head against the wall as long as this lady has. But honestly, if you're watching this on YouTube, you should rewind like 15, 20 minutes, watch that first video of hers, and then watch this fourth one, and listen to the change in tone, because now she's just appealing to their sense of duty. Like, you are school board members. You took an oath to help the students. Why do you need even more help, in theory, to do your job? Because you already promised you would do this job. So what's the point of the prayer? She's mixing logic in there. She's like, you already have an obligation to the school district. Why do you need to inject religion into this? This is her just, she's so sick of this at this point. Here's the last one.
I don't know why you need prayer to take this job seriously. Everyone up here took an oath. Every meeting that we've had since you've been here has been taken seriously. I have not participated, like I said, in your prayer, and I don't think anyone would doubt my commitment to the students of this district. So why you need this to take it seriously when you took an oath is questionable. So again, I've made it perfectly clear where I stand, but don't say this is going to unify when I'm telling you it will not. Because I'm one person, and no, I am not 7 people. And yes, you only need 4. But if I tell you I'm offended, I'm offended. That is not going to unify us. And if in practice, where you tell somebody you don't have to participate and don't worry, you won't be dinged or whatever, like, how do you do that? How do you do that? Are you going to say to everybody in the room who's like packed in here like sardines because they want to take a picture of their kid, oh, hold on a second, we're going to do this thing that's going to make you super uncomfortable right now, so you're going to leave the room? No, they're not going to leave the room because they want to save their seat. There's a practicality to the reality of the situation that you're ignoring. But also the fact that you're ignoring the words that I'm saying and making that you're saying that's your argument, that we won't be solemn enough, we won't take this seriously. What have you been doing for the last 6 months? Huh? Why do you need this? How does this benefit kids? And I have not heard a decent answer.
Amazing. I mean, that's a masterclass in how to challenge invocations. She was calm. She was full of righteous anger, armed with the facts. Unfortunately, she's also surrounded by Christian zealots who want to turn school board meetings into extensions of their church. I mean, again, if they go through with invocations, we know how this is going to go. Besides the lawsuit, right? Satanists are going to want to speak. Atheists are going to want to speak. A local pastor is going to want to speak, and he's going to say all the gay students in the district are going to hell. What happens when someone invokes the name of a god the majority of people don't believe in? What happens when a minority faith or a non-traditional faith wants to give an invocation, but they are told there's no room in the schedule for them? And why is this the issue that this school board wants to die on? Like, why is this so damn important compared to everything else school board members actually have to do? And here is someone clearly knows what she's talking about, banging her head against the wall, explaining you all should care about the students instead of yourselves, and not a single person seriously came to her defense. So after all of this board voted 5-2 to allow the drafting of a prayer policy. They're moving it to the next step. Like, their policy committee, I don't know who's on it. I hope that there's a lawyer in it. But they're going to put together a draft of what a policy could look like, which the board can then vote on. And I assume there will be public comment at that time, and people will chime in. And I hope, since Ms. Escobar wasn't able to talk sense to them, maybe all these other voices will be able to eventually. But, you know, if you were a smarter school board as a whole, you would not waste your time doing any of this, because it's a waste of time for everybody. But this is what happens with Christian nationalism. These people are hell-bent on injecting their religion everywhere where it doesn't belong. Even when they're elected to secular government positions where they actually have a job to do, they still want to treat it like their personal church. And by the way, Pamela Escobar, the lady who was speaking there, she has background as a print journalist and a TV reporter, which I think helps explain why, even as a non-lawyer, she's able to understand what is going on here and present it in such a compelling way. And, you know, she's very articulate, given that what she's actually saying is all the rest of you are out of your effing minds. So I guess the hope at this point is that the policy committee looks into the matter and then comes back to the board and says, yeah, there's no policy that's going to work because the cost of litigation and the risk of litigation is going to be too high. And there is no sensible invocation policy you can have, not at any government meeting, but especially not at a school board meeting. But if they decide to shoot themselves in the foot and move forward with invocations, I hope at least Miss Escobar can sleep soundly knowing she was right and she told them so, and she had the best interests of the district at heart, as opposed to all of those other people who apparently would rather waste thousands of taxpayer dollars paying legal bills than helping the kids in that district. So right now, there's no timeline for when this policy committee is going to meet or be done with their job or anything like that, but I will keep you updated.